Coming up today, a violent explosion hits an industrial area in the Chinese city of Tianjin, killing at least 7 people and injuring hundreds. President Park Geun-hye will visit Washington in mid-October for talks with US President Barack Obama. The trip was rearranged after an earlier visit was postponed due to the recent MERS outbreak in Korea. Plus, North Korea is reportedly refurbishing a uranium mill. An expert says the regime is looking to either expand its nuclear arsenal or produce fuel for its reactors. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, August 13th here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start with news on a massive explosion in the Chinese city of Tianjin. Chinese state media is reporting that the explosion happened at a container terminal at around 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday night local time. Now, the cause is not immediately clear. Photos and video you are watching now, shared on social media, show flames lighting up the sky and shockwaves rattling buildings kilometers away. China's Xinhua news agency says at least 7 people have been confirmed dead and hundreds more injured. The authorities say martial law has been declared in the blast zone. A fire started by the explosion is now under control. Tianjin is a major port city in the southeast of Beijing and home to well over 7 million people. We'll keep you updated on this story throughout the day. Kim Jong-un's reign of terror intensifies in North Korea. The young leader has reportedly had another high-level official executed. Citing unnamed sources, Seoul-based Yonhap news agency reported Wednesday that Vice Premier Choi Yong-gon was shot to death in May after expressing discontent about Kim's reforestation policy. South Korea's Unification Ministry declined to confirm the report, but said Choi was last seen in public around 8 months ago. Kim Jong-un has executed several senior officials since taking power in 2013, including his uncle Jang Sung-taek and former defense chief Hyun Young-chol. Lawmakers have slammed the nation's defense minister for the military's failure to detect North Korean troops placing landmines on the southern side of the heavily fortified border. 2 South Korean soldiers were severely wounded when they exploded last week. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Korea's defense minister Han Min-gu vowed stronger retaliatory action against North Korea for the landmine explosion last week.
As of now, we've reinstated a propaganda broadcasting campaign in 2 frontline regions. I believe this is strategically significant in countering North Korea, and I'm considering other measures.
His remarks came during a Parliamentary Defense Committee hearing on Wednesday, during which lawmakers urged the government to deliver a stronger response. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party said the incident and the poor initial response had exposed the military's weaknesses. They said someone must take responsibility for what happened and urged the government to punish those in charge of guard duty.
Now is not the time to comment on who should take responsibility. I believe we must first strengthen our combat readiness and better support the soldiers who are patrolling the frontline regions.
The defense minister said the military still doesn't know when or how the North Korean soldiers entered the southern side of the DMZ, adding that the military cannot monitor every spot along the border. Ruling party lawmakers responded by promising to supply more mine detectors for reconnaissance in so-called blind areas along the border. The committee closed the session by approving up a resolution that condemns North Korea for the incident, which it says is a violation of the armistice. The resolution also calls on the North to apologize and punish those responsible. It will now go to the full assembly for a vote. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea is dialing up the belligerent rhetoric ahead of upcoming annual joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. In a statement on Wednesday, North Korea's committee in charge of inter-Korean relations threatened to retaliate with, quote, a merciless shower of fire, end quote, if Seoul and Washington go ahead with their drill next week. The committee says the drills are a de facto declaration of war and warned an accidental military collision could turn into an all-out war. Now, it is common for North Korea to make such warnings ahead of drills such as these. Seoul and Washington are scheduled to hold their Ulchi Freedom Guardian drill for 4 days from next Monday. North Korea remains silent regarding last week's landmine incident, despite Seoul's repeated calls for an apology. And North Korea is reportedly ramping up its uranium production. Jeffrey Lewis, a non-proliferation expert at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, says North Korea is refurbishing its Pyeongsan uranium concentration plant in the south of the country. In an article for North Korea analysis website 38 North, Lewis said Pyongyang wants to use the extra uranium to either produce fuel for light water reactors or expand its nuclear arsenal. Now, uranium, if highly enriched, can be used to make weapons, giving North Korea a second way of building nuclear bombs in addition to its existing plutonium-based program. President Park Geun-hye, who had delayed her U.S. trip due to the recent MERS outbreak in Korea, has rescheduled her visit. She will head there in mid-October. Her office says U.S. President Barack Obama re-invited President Park to Washington. The two leaders will meet for summit talks on October 16th. It will be the two presidents' fourth summit meeting since President Park took office back in 2013. Presidents Park and Obama plan to discuss a range of issues, from enhancing the South Korea-US alliance, boosting cooperation on addressing North Korea's nuclear ambitions, to securing peace and stability in Northeast Asia. The presidential office in Seoul says the summit will offer the two sides a chance to reaffirm their alliance and open a new horizon in their cooperation. And President Park Geun-hye highlighted her two-track North Korea policy on Wednesday. It offered a preview of what she may say about the regime in her upcoming Liberation Day speech this weekend. Chae-sun reports.
Speaking to people who made sacrifices for the country's independence on Wednesday, President Park Geun-hye vowed to respond firmly to provocations by Pyongyang. In a reference to North Korea's recent landmine blast in the demilitarized zone, the president said Seoul will ensure such attacks are not repeated, while also laying a foundation for peace on the Korean peninsula. President Park's latest remarks indicate that while she has vowed to maintain a strict policy on provocations, she will likely pledge to continue efforts to revive dialogue with the North. In her speech on Saturday, marking the 70th anniversary of the peninsula's liberation from Japanese colonial rule. President Park's message for Japan is subject to change based on the content of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's statement on Friday, marking the anniversary of his country's surrender in World War II. The most pressing question is whether Abe will follow in the footsteps of his predecessors. In 1993, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yohei Kono, under the Miyazawa administration, acknowledged victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery were forced into prostitution. 2 years later, Prime Minister Tomiichi Murayama apologized for the imperialist suffering caused by Japan to its Asian neighbors.
일본 정부가 역대 내각의 역사 인식을 확실하게 계승한다는 점을 분명히 함으로써 우리나라를 비롯한 주변 국가의 관계를 새롭게 출발시키려는 성숙한 자세를 보여주었으면 합니다.
Considering the uncertainties in Seoul's relations with both Pyongyang and Tokyo, President Park, rather than making a monumental proposal, is widely expected to maintain the core of her current policies. Chae-sun, Arirang News.
UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has urged Japan to move forward for a better future by pursuing genuine reconciliation with countries in the region. In a rare statement on the issue, Ban's spokesman told Seoul-based Yonhap news agency that the Secretary-General has maintained his position that Japan should reconcile with its neighbours based on a, quote, humble reflection of past history. The spokesman added that Ban sincerely hopes the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II will serve as a somber occasion to reflect upon history and to encourage all countries in the region to move forward together. Former Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama has urged Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to make a heartfelt apology for Japan's wartime atrocities. Hatoyama, who is currently visiting Seoul, called on Abe to honour the 1995 Murayama Statement and repeat key words from it when Abe gives a speech Friday to mark the end of World War II. The former Prime Minister expressed deep remorse and apologised to all the victims of Japan's colonial rule and concerns on a lack of summits between Korea, Japan and China, blaming Abe for the lack of talks. Hatoyama added Korea and Japan must hold high-level talks as soon as possible. Demonstrators gathered at a weekly rally in Seoul on Wednesday ahead of an International Day of Recognition for the women forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. The few survivors were joined this week by an unusually large crowd of supporters. Kim reports.
Every Wednesday since 1992, people have gathered in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul to ask Japan to atone for its program of military sexual slavery during World War II. This week's demonstration had special meaning as it also marks International Memorial Day, a day of recognition for the so-called comfort women. Kim Bok-dong was among those at today's rally. A sexual slavery survivor, she is firm on receiving an apology for the atrocities she and those like her endured.
The Japanese government has still not said that it forced young women into sexual slavery, but we are going to fight until the end.
The gathering brought together activists and groups from Korea and overseas. Participants held signs demanding legal compensation and an official apology. They stood determined to draw attention to the comfort women's plight.
I've only read the victims' stories, but coming to the rally and meeting the survivors makes me feel more attached to this issue.
The Japanese government should resolve the issue as soon as possible. Most of the survivors have passed away, and many of those who are still alive are not in good health.
Around 200,000 women, mostly Koreans, were forced to serve the Japanese military during World War II. The event was disrupted when a Korean man in his 80s set himself on fire. But the demonstration resumed after the man was taken to the hospital. Later, students sang songs expressing determination and hope that Korea will not back down until justice is served. A huge banner floated above the crowd with a message asking Japan to apologize and atone for its wrongdoing.
Rain or snow, we have come out here calling on Japan for compensation. If Japan is not deaf or blind, they would have heard our voices. As a human rights activist, I am not going to let this happen again.
The women and supporters of the rally say they'll continue their fight for justice. But unfortunately, time is not on their side, with only 47 registered victims still alive. Kim, Arirang News.
Now, China set its currency lower again on Wednesday after its surprise devaluation of the yuan the day before. For the first time in more than 20 years, the decision has driven investors to safer assets. Song Ji-son reports.
China pushed down the value of its currency for a second day, setting another 1.6% lower on Wednesday, after lowering it 1.86% the day before. Tuesday's devaluation was the biggest one-day fall since a massive devaluation in 1994, when China aligned its official and market rates. The devaluations follow weakened data that showed China's exports tumbled 8% last month, hit by weaker demand from Europe, the US and Japan, and that producer prices had entered a fourth year of deflation. The action sent stock markets across the globe spinning, with prices of raw materials and crude oil also dropping sharply. Investors appeared worried that the decision is a sign of Beijing's own growing concern about its sliding economic growth rate and its ability to bolster growth. Demand for safer assets pushed down bond yields in the US and Europe. Beijing's action also weighs heavy on the US Fed and could force it to delay a rate hike previously expected in the second half of the year. For China, the benefits are clear. A cheaper yuan will boost exports by making them less expensive in overseas markets.
I think the present situation won't have a clear impact on the areas of trade and investment. My personal feeling is that, as in the past, the renminbi, and the newest information today that the renminbi has gone down, the adjustment of the renminbi, especially downwards adjustments, will have a stimulating effect on exports.
And as China is Korea's biggest trading and export partner, stronger demand and growth in Beijing will also benefit Seoul in the long run. Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the government is closely monitoring the foreign exchange market, and the latest devaluation may have positive effects on outbound shipments, as Seoul mostly exports intermediary goods to China, and Beijing ships them out after final production. 송재선, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a great day, and thank you as always for tuning in. We hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.